This testimony is being recorded in secret, in a location I cannot disclose. My name is Grand Ayatollah Muhammad Hassan Tabatabai. By every measure of religious scholarship, lineage, and authority, I should be the supreme leader of Iran today. But I am not. And now, after what happened to me, I am the most hunted man in the Islamic Republic. 72 hours. That is how long I was gone. My body lay in a hospital bed in Tehran, unresponsive but alive. The doctors had no explanation, no known cause. My vitals were stable, but I would not wake. But I was not asleep. I was somewhere else. I was being shown something. A vision of the year 2026. A specific night during Ramadan. A specific event that will happen above Musalla Mosque in Tehran itself. What I saw during those 72 hours has Iranian intelligence, the Revolutionary Guard, Western religious authorities across the Shia world desperate to silence me before you hear what I have to say. This video may not exist tomorrow. What you are about to hear has already been removed from 4 platforms and banned across Iran. But if you are watching this now, perhaps it is because you were meant to hear what is coming at the end of 2026. As mentioned earlier, my name is Grand Ayatollah Muhammad Hassan Tabatabai. I am 58 years old. I was born in Qom, the holy city of Shia Islam, into a family that traces our bloodline directly back to the Prophet Muhammad through Imam Hussein. For the past 23 years, I have held the title of Grand Ayatollah and operated from my office in northern Tehran, issuing religious rulings that guide millions of Shia Muslims across Iran and beyond. I have written 14 books on the Islamic jurisprudence. I have taught thousands of students. I have advised government officials on matters of religious law, and by every measure of scholarship, lineage, and popular support among the clerical establishment, I should be the supreme leader of Iran today. But I am not. When Ayatollah Khomeini died in 1989, the assembly of experts chose Ali Khamenei instead, a man with lesser religious credentials but greater political loyalty. I was given the title Grand Ayatollah and an office as compensation, a way to keep the religious establishment quiet. I have lived with that reality for 35 years, and now after what happened to me on the night of November 3rd, 2024, I am the most wanted man in the Islamic Republic of Iran. I did not die that night, but what happened to me was perhaps more terrifying than death. I fell into a sleep that no doctor could explain, a sleep that lasted exactly 72 hours, and while my body lay motionless in a hospital bed in Tehran, I was somewhere else entirely. I was standing before the throne of God. I met Jesus Christ face to face. I saw a vision of what will happen in Iran in the year 2026, something so catastrophic to Islam that the regime would rather kill me than let me speak about it. This testimony is being recorded in a hidden location outside of Iran. I cannot tell you where I am because there are people actively searching for me. What you are about to hear has already been removed from multiple platforms. Iranian intelligence has ordered internet service providers to block any video containing my name and this testimony. But if you are watching this now, perhaps it is because you were meant to hear what is coming in 2026. It was a Thursday night, November 3rd, 2024, just after midnight. I was alone in my private study on the second floor of my home in the Farmani district of northern Tehran. My wife Zara had gone to bed hours earlier. The house was silent except for the distant sound of traffic on Nyavaran Street and the occasional call of night birds in our garden. I had been studying a collection of hadiths regarding the return of the Mahdi, the 12th Imam who Shia Muslims believe will return to establish justice on earth. I was preparing a lecture I was supposed to deliver the following Friday at Musalla Mosque. The room smelled of the saffron tea that had gone cold in my cup, of old books and incense. I had a habit of burning oud wood while I studied late at night. The smoke curled toward the ceiling, grey wisps disappearing into darkness above the light of my desk lamp. I was reading a particular hadith when I felt it. A presence, not a thought or an imagination, but an actual presence filling the room, as real as another person standing there. The air became heavy, thick, almost hard to breathe. My heart started pounding, not from fear exactly, but from the weight of something massive and holy pressing down on the space around me. I looked up from my books, and the room seemed different somehow, brighter maybe, or more solid, more real than it had been a moment before. I tried to stand up, but my legs would not obey me. I tried to call out, to say a prayer, but my voice caught in my throat. The presence grew stronger, overwhelming, and I felt myself being pulled, not physically, but spiritually, as if something was reaching into the deepest part of my being and drawing me away from my body. I remember thinking, this is a jinn, an evil spirit trying to deceive me. I tried to recite Ayat al-Kursi, the verse of the throne from the Quran, the verse we use for protection against spiritual attack. But before I could finish the first line, everything went dark. Not the darkness of closing your eyes, but the darkness of ceasing to be present in the physical world at all. The last thing I remember from that room was my hand still resting on the open page of the Hadith collection, the smell of oud smoke, and the overwhelming certainty that I was being taken somewhere against my will. Then I was gone. My wife Zara found me 30 minutes later. She told me afterward that she had woken up suddenly with a terrible feeling, that a sense that something was wrong. She came downstairs and found me slumped over my desk, my eyes half open but unseeing, my breathing shallow, my body completely unresponsive. She shook me, called my name, slapped my face. Nothing. She screamed for our son, Hamid, who lived in the apartment above ours with his wife and children. Hamid came running down, saw me, and immediately called for an ambulance. While they waited, Zara kept trying to wake me, kept praying loudly, Ya Ali, Ya Hussein, begging the imams to intercede, to bring me back. But I could not hear her. I was already somewhere else. The ambulance arrived within 15 minutes and took me to Imam Khomeini Hospital Complex in central Tehran, one of the largest medical facilities in the country. The emergency room doctor on duty that night was Dr. Reza Ahmadi, a cardiologist I had met before at a medical conference where I had given a lecture on Islamic medical ethics. He recognized me immediately. He ordered a full battery of tests, brain scans, blood work, cardiac monitors, everything. My vital signs were stable. My heart was beating normally. My brain showed activity, but I would not wake up. Dr. Ahmadi tried every standard procedure to rouse an unconscious patient. Painful stimuli, loud noises, ammonia under the nose. I did not respond to any of it. He told my family that I appeared to be in some kind of coma, but he could not identify the cause. By dawn on Friday, November 4th, word had spread through Tehran that Grand Ayatollah Tabatabai had been hospitalized in a mysterious coma. My office staff arrived at the hospital. Senior clerics from Qom called for updates. The government officials from the Ministry of Intelligence and the Revolutionary Guard made inquiries. The hospital moved me to a private room on the 4th floor, room 412, the same floor where they keep high-profile patients who need security and privacy. My family set up a vigil. Zara sat beside my bed, holding my hand. My 4 children took turns keeping watch. My grandchildren were brought in to see me, their little faces confused and frightened at the sight of their grandfather lying motionless with tubes and wires attached to his body. Outside the hospital, news cameras gathered. By Friday afternoon, it was the lead story on state television. Grand Ayatollah in unexplained coma. Prayers requested from the faithful. Dr. Ahmadi brought in specialists. A neurologist examined me and found no evidence of stroke or brain injury. The test an infectious disease expert tested for encephalitis and meningitis. All tests came back negative. A toxicologist screened for poisons. Nothing. On Saturday, they did another full brain scan. Normal activity. No damage. No explanation. Dr. Ahmadi confessed to my family that he had never seen anything like this in 30 years of practice. A patient with normal vital signs, normal brain function, but completely unresponsive for more than 48 hours. By Sunday morning, November 6th, some of the clerics visiting from Qom began whispering that this was a spiritual matter, not a medical one. Perhaps the Grand Ayatollah was receiving a divine revelation. Perhaps he was being tested by God. Perhaps this was a sign. They had no idea how right they were, because while my body lay in that hospital bed for 72 hours, while doctors ran their tests and my family prayed their prayers and the clerics debated the meaning of my condition, I was fully conscious. I was awake. I was aware. But I was not in Tehran. I was not in Iran. I was not even on earth. I was standing in a place I had never imagined existed, a place Islamic theology never prepared me for, a place of absolute light and absolute terror. I was standing before the judgment seat of God, and I was about to meet the one person I had spent 40 years of my life denying, Jesus Christ. But to understand why I was about to stand before Jesus Christ, why I should have been terrified of that moment, you need to know who I was. You need to understand the life I had built, the empire of a religious authority and scholarship I had constructed over nearly 6 decades. You need to see how deeply invested I was in Islam, how impossible it seemed that everything I believed could be wrong. My journey did not begin in that hospital bed in Tehran. It began 58 years earlier in Qom, in a small house near the shrine of Fatima al-Masumeh, in a family that lived and breathed Shia Islam with every generation. I was born on March 15, 1966, to a father who was already a respected Islamic scholar and a mother whose family lineage was considered among the purest in Shia Islam. My father, Ayatollah Hassan Tabatabai, taught at the Qom seminary, and my mother, Fatima, came from a family of Sayyids, descendants of the Prophet Muhammad through the line of Imam Hussein. In our world, this was not just family history. This was destiny written in blood. From the moment I was born, my path was clear. I would be a scholar. I would be a leader. I would serve Islam at the highest levels. There was never any question, never any other option presented to me. And I wanted nothing else. My earliest memories are of sitting in my father's study, surrounded by walls of books bound in leather, the smell of old paper and tea with cardamom, listening to him recite the Quran in a voice that made the words sound like they were coming directly from heaven itself. By the time I was 6 years old, I had started memorizing the Quran. My father would wake me before dawn prayer, and we would sit together going over the verses line by line, surah by surah. He was patient but demanding. If I made a mistake, we would start the page over. If I forgot a verse, we would repeat it 50 times until it was burned into my memory. By age 9, I had memorized all 114 surahs. All 6,236 verses. My father wept the day I completed the memorization. He held my face in his hands and said, "You are marked by God for greatness." The community celebrated with a special ceremony at our local mosque. I recited the entire Quran from memory over 3 days. People came from across Qom to hear the child prodigy. I remember the pride I felt, the certainty that I was special, that Allah had chosen me for something important. That pride would follow me for the next 49 years. When I turned 13, I began formal religious training at the Qom Seminary, the most important center of Shia Islamic learning in the world. For centuries, this institution had produced the greatest scholars, the most influential Ayatollahs, the men who shaped Shia theology and law. I studied Arabic grammar and literature, learning to read the classical text in their original language. I studied Islamic jurisprudence, learning the complex science of deriving religious rulings from the Quran and Hadith. I studied logic and philosophy, engaging with the works of the great Muslim thinkers and even some Greek philosophers whose works had been preserved in Arabic translation. I studied Hadith science, learning how to verify the authenticity of sayings attributed to the Prophet Muhammad and the 12 Imams. My teachers recognized my intelligence quickly. I absorbed information faster than most students. I could debate complex theological points with precision and clarity. By 18, I was already being invited to participate in advanced seminars normally reserved for older students. At 23, I left Qom for the first time in my life to pursue advanced studies at the Islamic Seminary in Najaf, Iraq, another major center of Shia learning. I spent 3 years there studying under Grand Ayatollah Abu al-Qasim al-Khoi, one of the most respected religious authorities in the Shia world at that time. Those years in Najaf deepened my understanding of Islamic law and expanded my reputation beyond Iran. When I returned to Qom at age 26, I was already being recognized as a rising scholar, someone destined for high religious authority. That same year, my father arranged my marriage to Zara, the daughter of another prominent Ayatollah in Qom. She was 20 years old, intelligent, devout, beautiful in the modest way our culture valued. We were married in a traditional ceremony attended by hundreds of people from the religious community. Our marriage was not just the joining of two people, but the joining of two important religious families, strengthening networks of influence and authority that stretched across Iran. Zara and I built our life together in Qom. Our first son, Hamid, was born when I was 28. Then came Ali 2 years later, then our daughter Maryam, and finally our youngest son, Javad. I was a strict father, the way my father had been with me. I taught my sons to memorize Quran before they learned to read Persian. I taught my daughter the importance of modesty and devotion to the family of the Prophet. We prayed together 5 times a day. We observed every religious fast and festival. We made pilgrimage to Mashhad to visit the shrine of Imam Reza. We lived what everyone around us would call the perfect Islamic life. Zara managed our home with skill and raised our children with devotion. I focused on my studies and my teaching, building my reputation with every lecture, every book, every religious ruling I issued. By the time I was 35 years old, I had achieved the rank of Ayatollah and had begun teaching my own classes at the Qom Seminary. Students came from across Iran and from Shia communities in Iraq, Lebanon, Pakistan, and even Europe to study under me. I was known for my ability to explain complex legal principles in ways that students could understand and apply. I wrote my first book that year, a commentary on a classical text of Islamic jurisprudence. It was well received in scholarly circles and established me as a serious intellectual voice. Over the next 20 years, I would write 13 more books covering topics from Quranic interpretation to the political philosophy of Islamic government, to the ethics of modern medical procedures from an Islamic perspective. These books were published, distributed, read by thousands, used as textbooks in seminaries. My name became known not just in Iran, but across the Shia world. Everything changed in 1989 when Ayatollah Khomeini died. He had been the supreme leader of Iran since the Islamic Revolution in 1979, holding both religious and political authority over the entire nation. By the time of his death, I was 43 years old and had been recognized by my peers and by popular consensus among religious scholars as a Grand Ayatollah, the highest rank of religious authority in Shia Islam. More importantly, I was seen by many senior clerics as the natural successor to Khomeini. I had the superior religious credentials. I had the proper lineage tracing back to the Prophet. I had the scholarship, the respect, the following among both clerics and ordinary believers. Several members of the Assembly of Experts, the body responsible for choosing the supreme leader, approached me privately and told me they would support my selection. I believed it was going to happen. I believed this was the culmination of everything my life had been building toward. I would become the supreme leader of Iran, the guardian of the Islamic Revolution, the highest religious and political authority for millions of Shia Muslims. But the Assembly of Experts chose Ali Khamenei instead. He was younger than me, less accomplished in religious scholarship, that and lacked the direct lineage to the Prophet that I possessed. But he had something I did not have. He had been deeply involved in the political structures of the Islamic Republic from the beginning. He had proven his loyalty to the revolutionary government. He was seen as someone who could be controlled by the political establishment, someone who would serve the interests of the regime rather than challenge it. The decision was not about religious merit, it was about political power and control. I was devastated. So were many of my supporters among the clerics. There were quiet protests, carefully worded objections, but in the end, the decision stood. Khamenei became supreme leader, and I was given a consolation prize. I was granted the title of Grand Ayatollah with an official office in Tehran, resources, staff, and the freedom to continue teaching and issuing religious rulings. I was given just enough authority to keep me and my supporters from openly rebelling, but not enough to challenge Khamenei's power. I moved to Tehran and established my office in the Farmaneh district. I continued my work, teaching students, writing books, issuing fatwas on questions of Islamic law that people sent to me from around the world. To the outside observer, I had a position of tremendous influence and respect. I was one of the most prominent Grand Ayatollahs in Iran. I had thousands of followers who looked to me for religious guidance. I had access to government officials, media platforms, and international Islamic conferences. But inside, I knew the truth. I had been passed over. I had been pushed aside for political reasons. I was operating within a system that had rejected me at the highest level, and I had chosen to accept it rather than fight it, because fighting would have cost me everything. So I built my life within those constraints. I played the role. I supported Khamenei publicly. I never openly questioned the decision. I buried my resentment and my doubts, and I focused on the work I was allowed to do. For 35 years, I maintained that facade. I became very good at it. I gave lectures praising the wisdom of the Islamic Republic. I issued fatwas that supported government policies when asked. I attended state functions and sat in rooms with officials I privately disagreed with. And I smiled and nodded and said what was expected of me. My wife Zara knew some of my frustration, but never the depth of it. My children grew up seeing me as a respected religious leader, never knowing that their father believed he had been cheated of his rightful position. I told myself I was serving Islam, that my personal disappointment did not matter as long as I was teaching truth and guiding people towards God. But the truth was more complicated than that. The truth was that I had questions I was not asking, doubts I was not exploring, contradictions I was not examining, because doing so would have threatened the entire structure of my life. There were moments over those decades when something would stir in my heart, something I could not explain and did not want to acknowledge. 3 times in the 10 years before my supernatural sleep, I had the same dream. I would be standing in the courtyard of the Imam Reza shrine in Mashhad and surrounded by thousands of pilgrims, and suddenly a figure dressed in white would appear above the golden dome. I could never see his face clearly, but he would extend his hands toward me, and I would feel a pull in my chest, a longing, a sense that this figure was calling me toward something. I would wake up disturbed, my heart pounding, and I would immediately dismiss it as a meaningless dream, maybe something I ate, maybe stress. I never told anyone about these dreams. I never examined what they might mean. Then there was the encounter 7 years before my sleep with a man named Reza, who had been one of my students. He came to my office one afternoon and confessed that he had left Islam and become a Christian. I was shocked and angry. I demanded to know how someone I had taught could fall into such error. He told me calmly that he had been reading the New Testament and that Jesus had appeared to him in a dream and called him to follow. He said he had tried to resist but could not deny what he had experienced. I spent 2 hours trying to argue him back to Islam, showing him verses from the Quran, explaining why Christianity was a corrupted religion, why Jesus was only a prophet and not the Son of God. He listened respectfully but would not be moved. Before he left, he said something I never forgot. He said, "Teacher, I know you feel it too. I know there is something calling you. Do not wait too long to answer." I was furious. I told him never to contact me again. But that night, alone in my study, his words echoed in my mind. "I know you feel it too." I pushed the thought away, but it stayed there, buried, waiting. While doctors at Imam Khomeini Hospital were running tests trying to find a medical explanation for my unresponsive state, while my family sat beside my bed praying to Allah and the 12 Imams for my recovery, while news channels across Iran were reporting on the mysterious coma of Grand Ayatollah Tabatabai, I was experiencing something that Islamic theology had never prepared me for. I was fully conscious. I was completely aware, but I was not in my body anymore. I was being pulled away from the physical world, torn from everything I knew, dragged towards something vast and terrifying. The transition was not gentle. It felt like being ripped apart and reassembled somewhere else. One moment I was in my study in Tehran with the presence pressing down on me, and the next moment I was moving through darkness, or not darkness exactly, but an absence of everything physical, everything material. I could not feel my body. I had no sense of weight or temperature or physical sensation at all, but I was more aware, more conscious than I had ever been in my entire life. The pull was irresistible, like gravity but stronger, like every cell of my being was being drawn toward a specific point. I tried to resist it at first. I tried to pray, to recite verses from the Quran, to call on the names of the Imams for protection, but the words had no power here. They felt empty, like shouting into a void where no one was listening. That realization terrified me more than the pull itself. For 58 years, I had believed that the Quran was the eternal word of God, that reciting it would bring protection and blessing, that calling on Ali and Hussein would bring intercession and help. But here, in this place between physical and spiritual reality, those words felt like nothing. They dissolved before they could even form completely in my mind. I was alone with this pull, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Islamic theology teaches that when a person dies, the soul sleeps in the grave until the day of resurrection. We are taught that there is no consciousness after death, no awareness, just a sleep that could last thousands of years but will feel like an instant. We are taught that on the last day, Allah will raise everyone from their graves and then the judgment will happen. But I was not asleep, I was awake, I was aware, and I was being brought somewhere right now, not at some distant future resurrection. Everything I had been taught was wrong, and I knew it with absolute certainty in that moment. If Islam was wrong about what happens after death, what else was it wrong about? That question burned in my mind as I was pulled forward through that darkness. The darkness began to change. Light started appearing, not like sunlight or electric light, but light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The light grew brighter and brighter until it was overwhelming, until it was everything. And then suddenly I was standing or existing in a state that felt like standing in a massive space that I can only describe as a whole. Though it was not a physical structure, it was reality itself restructured around one central purpose, judgment. The light filled everything, and it was not just bright, it was alive. It had consciousness, it had awareness, it saw me, it knew me. And I understood immediately that I was standing in the presence of absolute holiness. I have no words in Persian or Arabic or English that can fully describe what that holiness felt like. It was like standing naked in front of a searchlight that revealed every hidden thing, every secret thought, every shameful moment, every prideful decision, every hateful word I had ever spoken. But it was not just revealing these things to me. It was making me experience them all at once, making me feel the full weight of 58 years of sin pressing down on my consciousness. Every lustful thought I had dismissed as normal. Every moment of pride when I enjoyed being called Grand Ayatollah and loved the respect and power that came with the title. Every time I had judged someone else in my heart while maintaining a face of religious piety. Every harsh word I had spoken to my wife or children in private while teaching others about Islamic kindness. Every political compromise I had made supporting a regime I knew was corrupt because it benefited me to do so. All of it was visible. All of it was present. And I could not hide any of it. I had taught for decades about the day of judgment, about standing before Allah and having your deeds weighed on a scale. I had taught that if your good deeds outweighed your bad deeds, you would enter paradise. I had taught that Allah was merciful and would forgive sincere believers who had tried their best. But standing in this light, experiencing this exposure to absolute holiness, I understood that everything I had taught was a lie. There was no scale, there was no balance, there was only perfection or imperfection, holiness or sin. And I was drowning in the weight of my imperfection, every sin I had ever committed, and I could see them all now stretching back through my entire life, was like a stone tied around my neck, pulling me down. The good things I had done, the prayers, the fasting, the charity, the teaching, All of it felt like filthy rags in the presence of this light. Nothing I had done was good enough. Nothing was pure enough. Nothing could stand in the presence of this holiness. And then I realized something even more terrifying. I was not just guilty of my own sins. I was guilty for everyone I had influenced. I saw faces, thousands of them, millions maybe, students I had taught, people who had read my books, families who had followed my fatwas, government officials who had used my religious authority to justify their actions. All the people I had led deeper into Islam, deeper into a religion that I was starting to understand, was leading them away from something, away from someone. I saw a young man who had come to me 15 years earlier questioning whether the Quran's account of Jesus was accurate. I had shut down his questions with religious authority, convinced him to stop doubting, sent him back into Islam. I saw him now, his face, and I knew somehow that he had died, still believing the lie I had confirmed for him. I saw a woman who had asked me whether Muslims and Christians worship the same God. I had told her confidently that we did, that Allah was just the Arabic name for the God of the Bible. I saw her face and knew that she had lived the rest of her life believing she did not need Jesus because she already had God through Islam. The weight of all these people, all these souls I had influenced pressed down on me like a mountain. I do not know how long I stood there in that light, experiencing the crushing weight of my guilt. Time did not work the same way in that place. It could have been seconds or hours or years, but then I heard something that cut through everything else. I heard my name, not my title, not Grand Ayatollah, not even my full formal name. I heard the name my mother called me when I was a child. I heard Hassan spoken in a voice I had never heard before, but somehow recognized instantly. The voice was not loud, but it was everything. It was like music and thunder and perfect love and absolute authority all at once. It was a voice that carried the weight of eternity, but spoke with intimate personal knowledge. It was a voice I knew I had been hearing my whole life in whispers and dreams and moments of conscience, but I had always ignored it, always dismissed it, always turned away from it. I turned and I saw him. Jesus Christ was standing in the light. He was not separate from the light. He was the source of it. The light was coming from him, pouring out of him, radiating from his presence. And I knew immediately, without any doubt, without any question, without any possibility of being wrong, that I was looking at God himself, not a prophet, not a messenger, not a created being, God in human form. The recognition was instant and total. Every argument I had ever made against the divinity of Christ dissolved like smoke. Every verse from the Quran I had quoted denying that Jesus was the Son of God felt like ash in my mouth. Every lecture I had given explaining that Christians had corrupted their scriptures and misunderstood Jesus crashed down around me like a house built on sand. I was standing before Jesus Christ and he was God, and I had spent 40 years of my life denying him. His face was more real than anything I had ever seen in physical life. I cannot describe it adequately because human language fails. It was a face of infinite beauty and infinite authority. His eyes held perfect love and perfect truth at the same time. Looking into those eyes, I felt completely known and completely loved and completely terrified all at once. He knew everything about me. He had always known. He had watched every moment of my life. He had heard every prayer I had prayed to Allah. He had seen every time I had taught against him. Now he had witnessed every opportunity I had rejected to seek him. And he was looking at me now with those eyes that held both judgment and mercy, both holiness and love. I saw his hands. The scars were there. Not healed over, not faded, but present and visible. The wounds from crucifixion that Islam teaches never happened, but they had happened. The evidence was right there in his hands. He had been nailed to a cross. He had died. Islam's central claim about Jesus, that he was not crucified, that Allah would never allow his prophet to be humiliated in that way, was completely false. The scars proved it. And if Islam was wrong about that, if the Quran's account of Jesus was wrong about something so central, then the entire foundation of Islam collapsed. If Muhammad had been wrong about Jesus, then Muhammad was not a true prophet. But if the Quran contradicted the truth about the most important event in human history, then the Quran was not from God. Everything I had built my life on was crumbling in real time as I stood there looking at Jesus' scarred hands. I tried to speak, but at first no words would come. My mind was reeling, trying to process what I was experiencing, trying to hold on to some piece of my Islamic worldview, trying to find some way to explain this that did not require me to admit I had been completely wrong about everything. But I could not. There was no explanation except the obvious one. Jesus was Lord. Jesus was God. I had been wrong. Islam had been wrong. And I was standing before the one I had spent my entire adult life denying, the one I had taught millions of people to reject. Finally, I found my voice, and the only words I could say were, "I'm sorry." I said it in Persian, in Arabic, in every language I knew. "I am sorry. I did not know. I did not understand. I thought I was serving God. I thought Islam was truth. I did not know." Jesus spoke, and his voice was not condemning, but it was truth, and truth was harder to bear than condemnation would have been. He said, "You did not know because you did not seek Hassan. The evidence was there in creation, in your conscience, in your heart, in the dreams I sent you, in the man who came to you and told you about me. You knew something was calling you, but you suppressed it because the cost was too high. You chose your position, your reputation, your family's honor, your life's work over seeking truth, and you led others to do the same." His words cut through me like a sword. Every excuse I had built over the years, every justification for why I had ignored the questions and suppressed the doubts, all of it fell away. He was right. I had not sought truth. I had protected my position instead. And then Jesus did something I did not expect. He showed me my life again, but from his perspective, from heaven's view. I saw myself at age 15 sitting in my father's library reading a commentary on the Quran's description of Jesus' birth and miracles. I remembered that moment. I had wondered to myself why Allah would give Jesus the power to heal the blind and raise the dead and create life from clay if he was just a prophet like Muhammad. Why would Allah give greater signs to Jesus than to Muhammad if Muhammad was the final and greatest prophet? I had asked my father that question, and he had rebuked me sharply. He told me never to compare the prophets in that way, that it was disrespectful to Muhammad, that I should trust what the Quran said and not ask questions that led to doubt. I had obeyed. I had pushed the question down and never asked it again. But Jesus had heard that question. He had been calling me even then, putting that question in my heart, and I had rejected the call. I saw myself at age 32 reading a Christian book that someone had left at the seminary, probably as an attempt at missionary outreach. The book was about the historical evidence for Jesus' resurrection. I read 3 chapters before I realized what I was doing and threw the book away in anger. I told myself it was Christian propaganda, lies designed to deceive Muslims, but something in those 3 chapters had stirred something in me, and in a sense that maybe the evidence was stronger than I wanted to admit. I had felt fear rising in my chest, fear that if I kept reading, I might be convinced, and being convinced would destroy everything. So I stopped. I threw the book away. I never thought about it again, or I tried not to. But Jesus had seen that moment. He had been reaching out to me through that book, and I had slammed the door in his face. I saw myself at age 46, standing in my office in Tehran, meeting with a Christian convert from Islam, a man who had been imprisoned for his faith and had just been released. He had come to me hoping I would use my influence to speak out against the persecution of Christian converts. He told me his story of how Jesus had appeared to him in a dream while he was in prison and had given him peace in the middle of torture. He told me that Jesus loved me too, that Jesus was calling me, that it was not too late to turn to him. I remembered feeling anger and disgust. I told him he had betrayed Islam and his family and his country. I told him his dream was from Satan trying to deceive him. I refused to help him and told him to leave. He left quietly with tears in his eyes. I never saw him again, but Jesus showed me what happened to that man after he left my office. He had gone back to his family and continued to share his faith despite my rejection and despite the danger. He was arrested again 2 years later and executed. And before he died, he prayed for me. He prayed that the same Jesus who had saved him would one day open my eyes. That prayer had been heard. Jesus had been pursuing me even through that man's intercession, and I had treated him with contempt. I saw moment after moment like this, stretching across decades. Every time Jesus had called me, every opportunity I had been given to seek truth, every witness that had crossed my path, and every time I had turned away, not because there was no evidence, but because accepting the evidence would have cost me everything. Jesus let me see it all, let me feel the weight of it, and then he said something that made me want to disappear into nothing. He said, "Look at what your teaching produced, Al-Hassan. Look at the fruit of your life's work." And suddenly I was seeing the faces again, but this time I was seeing their eternities. I saw the young man who had questioned the Quran's account of Jesus, the one I had convinced to stop doubting. I saw where he was now, not in paradise, not in Allah's presence, but separated from God, in darkness, in torment, experiencing the eternal consequence of dying without Christ. And I was partially responsible. My teaching had been one of the influences that kept him from seeking Jesus. I saw the woman who had asked if Muslims and Christians worship the same God. I had told her yes, told her she did not need to investigate Christianity because she already had the truth in Islam. She had believed me. She had died in a car accident 8 years later, still a Muslim, still trusting that her prayers to Allah were reaching the true God, but they had not been. She had been praying to a false conception of God, worshipping an idea that did not correspond to reality, and she had died in that deception, and I had helped keep her there. I saw hundreds more like this, maybe thousands, students I had taught, the readers of my books, people who had followed my fatwas, everyone I had influenced towards Islam, I had influenced away from Jesus. And Jesus was showing me the eternal consequences of that influence. The weight was unbearable. I fell down, or would have if I had a physical body. I cried out, "I deserve hell. I know I deserve hell. Everything you are showing me proves it. I have not only rejected you myself, I have led others to reject you. I have blood on my hands. There is no punishment severe enough for what I have done." Jesus looked at me with those eyes that held perfect love and perfect justice together, and he said, "Yes, Hassan, you deserve hell, You deserve eternal separation from me. You deserve to experience forever the weight of guilt you are feeling right now. That is what justice demands. I waited for the sentence. I waited for him to cast me away into the darkness I deserved. But he did not. Instead, he extended his hands toward me, and I saw the scars again, the wounds from the nails, the evidence of his crucifixion. And he said, "But I died for this, Hassan. I died for your rejection of me. I died for your pride. I died for your teaching that led others astray. I died for every sin you have committed and every soul you have misled. I took all of it on myself on the cross. I experienced the hell you deserve so that you would not have to. The question is not whether my sacrifice is sufficient to cover your guilt. It is. The sacrifice of the eternal Son of God is sufficient to cover the sins of the entire world. The question is whether you will receive it." I did not understand. In Islam, salvation is something you earn. You pray 5 times a day. You fast during Ramadan. You give charity. You make pilgrimage to Mecca. You do good deeds and hope they outweigh your bad deeds. And maybe, if Allah wills, He will grant you paradise. But Jesus was offering something completely different. He was offering forgiveness I had not earned, could never earn, did not deserve. He was offering to credit His perfection to my account, to take my sin upon Himself, even though He had already paid for it 2,000 years ago. It was grace, pure, unearned, undeserved grace, and it was the most radical thing I had ever heard. I asked why. Why would you offer me mercy? I have been your enemy. I have spent 40 years opposing you, denying you, teaching others to reject you. Why would you love someone like me? Jesus said, "Because love is who I am, Hassan. I loved you when you were born. I loved you when you were memorizing the Quran as a child, thinking you were serving God. I loved you when you became an Ayatollah and taught against me. I loved you when you ignored my call again and again. I loved you when you died. I love you now. My love is not based on what you do. It is based on who I am. And I am offering you a choice right now." He paused, and the weight of the moment pressed down on everything. He said, "You can accept judgment now based on your works. You can face justice for every word, every deed, every soul you led astray. You can have exactly what you deserve, or you can receive my grace. You can accept that I paid for your sins. You can believe that my death was sufficient. You can receive forgiveness you did not earn. And if you choose grace, I will send you back." The word "back" hit me like lightning. I said, back to my body? But I have been dead or unconscious or whatever this is for how long? Jesus said, "In your world, 72 hours have passed. Your body is lying in a hospital bed in Tehran. The doctors say you should wake up or die soon. But you are not going to die yet, Hassan. If you choose to receive my grace, I am going to send you back to your body, back to your life, back to Iran. Because there is something you must do. There is a message you must carry. There is a warning you must give." He gestured with his scarred hand, and suddenly the space around us changed. I was no longer in the judgment hall. I was somewhere else, floating above the earth, seeing Iran from a height and perspective I had never experienced. Jesus was beside me, and he said, "Before you decide, there is something you must see. Something that is coming to your nation. Something that will happen in the year 2026. Watch." Below me, I could see Tehran spread out like a map, the whole city visible at once. But then my vision focused, zooming in like a camera lens until I was hovering above a specific location. The Musalla Mosque in central Tehran, one of the largest mosques in Iran, a place where hundreds of thousands gather for Friday prayers and special occasions. I could see it in perfect detail even though it was nighttime. The massive prayer hall, the tall minarets, the courtyard that could hold 1 million people. And it was packed, completely filled with worshippers dressed in white, the way people dressed during Ramadan night prayers. I could hear the call to prayer echoing from the minarets. I could see the Imam leading the congregation in Taraweeh prayer, the special prayers performed during Ramadan nights. Everyone was moving in synchronized prostration, foreheads touching the ground, a sea of devotion stretching in every direction. I had seen this scene hundreds of times in my life. It was beautiful in its order and unity. But Jesus said, "This is Ramadan 2026, the 15th night. Watch what happens." Suddenly the sky above the mosques changed. Light began to appear, not from the sun or the moon or any natural source, but light that seemed to tear through the fabric of reality itself. It started as a small point above the mosque's central dome, and then it expanded, growing brighter and brighter until it was overwhelming, until it filled the entire sky above Tehran. People in the mosque noticed. Prayers faltered, people looked up. Some screamed, some tried to run but could not move, frozen by what they were seeing. And in the light, a figure appeared, Jesus Christ in glory, standing in the air above Musalla Mosque, visible to everyone in the crowd, visible to everyone watching on the live television broadcasts that always covered Ramadan prayers, visible to the whole city and through cameras and phones to the whole world. He was not hidden. He was not a private vision. He was physically, undeniably, unmistakably present in the sky above the mosque. I could see his face from where I hovered in the vision, the same face I was looking at now, the same eyes, the same scars on his hands that were raised toward the crowd below. And he spoke. His voice was not loud, but somehow everyone heard it, whether audibly or in their hearts, I could not tell. He said, "I am Jesus Christ, the Son of God. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. I died for your sins. I rose from the dead. I am calling you to turn from your idols and come to me. Islam cannot save you. Muhammad cannot save you. The Quran cannot save you. Only I can save you. Come to me." The reaction below was instant chaos. Some people fell on their faces in terror. Some stood with their hands raised, not knowing whether to pray or flee. Some began weeping uncontrollably, deep wailing cries. Some began shouting Allahu Akbar, trying to assert Islamic faith against what they were seeing, but their voices sounded hollow and desperate. I could see religious police scrambling, trying to control the crowd, but they were just as shocked as everyone else. I could see the Imam who had been leading prayer, standing frozen on the minbar, his mouth open, like unable to speak. I could see government officials in the VIP section staring upward with expressions of absolute horror. And above it all, Jesus stood in glory, his presence filling the atmosphere, holy and powerful and completely undeniable. The appearance lasted several minutes, long enough that people fumbled for their phones and started recording, long enough that the live television broadcasts captured everything, long enough that no one could later claim they had imagined it or that it had been too brief to be sure what they saw. And then Jesus raised his scarred hands in a gesture of blessing and invitation, and the light intensified until it was blinding, and when it faded, he was gone. But the effect remained. The crowd erupted into confusion and shouting and weeping. Some people were running out of the mosque. Some were falling to their knees, crying out to Jesus. Some were standing in shock, unable to process what had just happened. And I knew, watching this vision, that within seconds, the videos would start uploading to the internet. Within minutes, millions would be watching. Within hours, it would be the biggest story in the world. Jesus Christ had appeared above the holiest Islamic site in Shia Iran during the holiest month of the Islamic calendar, and he had publicly, undeniably declared his divinity and called people to himself. But Jesus was not finished showing me what would happen. The vision shifted, and I was no longer hovering above Musalla Mosque. I was seeing multiple locations at once, as if I could observe different places across the world simultaneously. That same night, the same hour that Jesus appeared above the mosque in Tehran, millions of Shia Muslims around the world were experiencing encounters with him. In Qom, the holy city where I was born, I saw an elderly Ayatollah asleep in his home near the seminary. Jesus appeared to him in his room, not in a dream but physically present. The old man woke up, saw Jesus standing there, and instead of fear, I saw his face fill with recognition and relief, as if he had been waiting his whole life for this moment. He got out of bed, fell on his knees, and said, "I knew it. I always knew there was something more." In Mashhad, at the shrine of Imam Reza, where millions make pilgrimage every year, I saw a young woman praying at the tomb. She was weeping, begging for help with a sick child. Suddenly, Jesus appeared beside her in the crowded shrine, visible only to her. He touched her shoulder, and she turned and looked into his face. I could not hear what he said to her, but I saw her expression change from desperation to peace, from confusion to understanding. She whispered, "You are real. You are God." In Iraq, in the holy cities of Najaf and Karbala, where the great Imams are buried, where millions of Shia pilgrims come from across the world, I saw the same thing happening. Jesus appearing to people during their prayers, during their pilgrimages, in their homes, in their cars, at their workplaces. Not to everyone, but to millions. Some saw him with their physical eyes, like the Ayatollah in Qom. Some encountered him in dreams so vivid and real that they woke up knowing it was more than a dream. Some heard his voice speaking to them while they were fully awake, calling them by name, telling them he loved them, inviting them to follow him. And it was not just in Iran and Iraq. I saw the same encounters happening in Lebanon among the Shia communities there, in Bahrain and Kuwait and Saudi Arabia's eastern province where Shia minorities lived, in Pakistan and India and Afghanistan, in London and Dearborn and Toronto and Sydney. Everywhere the Shia diaspora had spread across the world. The encounters were all different but carried the same message. Jesus identifying himself not as the Prophet Isa but as the Son of God. Jesus showing his scars. Jesus declaring that he died and rose again. Jesus calling people to turn from Islam and follow him. And I saw the responses. Some people accepted immediately, falling to their knees in surrender, then praying to receive him as Lord and Saviour right there in the moment. Some resisted, terrified of what it would cost them, trying to explain it away as a satanic deception, trying to hold on to their Islamic faith. Some ran to their imams and religious leaders, demanding explanations, asking how this could be happening. But the wave had started, and I could see that it was not going to stop. This was not a small movement. This was not a handful of isolated conversions. This was millions of people across the Shia world experiencing supernatural encounters with Jesus Christ all at once. Jesus showed me what would happen in the weeks and months following that night. I saw the Iranian government scrambling to respond to the appearance above Musalla Mosque, the supreme leader calling emergency meetings with the Supreme Council, not the intelligence services trying to confiscate videos and arrest people who were spreading them. But the videos were already everywhere, uploaded to platforms faster than they could be blocked. State television trying to declare it a mass hallucination caused by American technology, psychological warfare from the West. The Grand Mufti of Iran issuing a fatwa declaring that anyone who claimed Jesus was God was an apostate who must repent or face execution. But the official responses felt desperate and hollow because Too many people had seen, too many witnesses, too much evidence. You cannot deny what millions experienced simultaneously. I saw thousands, then hundreds of thousands, then millions of Shia Muslims publicly declaring faith in Jesus Christ. They were doing it despite the danger, despite knowing they could be arrested, tortured, or killed. Families were converting together. Underground house churches were forming across Iran. Former mosques in areas where entire neighborhoods had converted were being quietly transformed into Christian meeting places. Ayatollahs and religious scholars who had encountered Jesus were beginning to teach about him, using their knowledge of Islamic texts to show other Muslims how the Quran itself pointed to Jesus' supremacy, how Muhammad's own words in the Hadith acknowledged Jesus' unique role. These former Islamic leaders became the most effective evangelists because they knew exactly what arguments Muslims would raise and exactly how to answer them from both the Bible and the Quran. I saw the persecution that came with this great harvest, the Revolutionary Guard raiding homes and arresting new believers, but even prison filling with Christians, many of them former Muslims, public executions of converts who refused to recant, families disowning children who accepted Jesus. But I also saw something remarkable. The persecution was not stopping the movement, it was accelerating it. Every martyr created 10 more seekers. Every testimony of someone choosing death rather than denying Jesus convinced others that this faith must be real, must be worth dying for. The blood of the martyrs was becoming the seed of the church, just as it had been in the first centuries of Christianity. Jesus showed me specific signs that would appear before 2026, so that when I went back and told people what I had seen, they would be able to watch for these signs and know that the vision was true. He showed me an increase in dreams and visions among Muslims that was already beginning to happen even now in 2024. He told me to tell people to search online for testimonies of Muslims dreaming of Jesus, that they would find thousands of accounts from across the Islamic world, and that these accounts would multiply dramatically as 2026 approached. He showed me political changes that would happen in Iran, specific events I cannot fully describe here because they have not occurred yet, and speaking to specifically could endanger people. He showed me technological developments that would make the 2026 appearance impossible to fake. Advances in video authentication and artificial intelligence detection that would allow experts to verify that what happened above Mosala Mosque was not computer-generated imagery or holographic projection, but an actual supernatural event. He showed me natural phenomena, unusual weather patterns, and astronomical events that would occur in the months before Ramadan 2026. Things that Iranian mullahs would try to interpret as signs supporting Islam, but that would actually be God's way of preparing the ground for what was coming. He showed me diplomatic events, specific meetings between world leaders, changes in international relations that would seem unrelated, but were actually part of God's sovereign plan to ensure that when Jesus appeared, the whole world would be watching Iran. I cannot share all these signs in detail because I am in hiding, and speaking to specifically would help the Iranian intelligence services narrow down my location or the location of the people helping me. But those who truly seek will recognize these signs as they unfold. They will see the pieces falling into place exactly as Jesus showed me. And they will know that 2026 is really coming. Then Jesus asked me the question that everything had been building toward. He extended his scarred hand toward me and said, "Hassan, do you receive my grace? Do you believe that I died for your sins and rose from the dead? Do you trust me as your Lord and Saviour? Will you confess me before others no matter what it costs you? Will you go back to Iran and tell them what you have seen? I knew what he was asking. I knew what my answer would cost. If I said yes, if I accepted Jesus and went back to tell others, I would lose everything. My position as Grand Ayatollah would be gone instantly. The title I had worked decades to achieve, the respect I had earned through years of scholarship, the authority I wielded in religious circles, all of it would be destroyed the moment I declared Jesus as Lord. My family would reject me. Zara, my wife of 35 years, would divorce me under Islamic law because apostasy breaks the marriage contract. My children would disown me to protect their own reputations and positions. My grandchildren would be taught to forget I existed. My safety would be forfeit. The Iranian government does not tolerate high-profile conversions from Islam to Christianity, especially not from someone at my level. They would declare me an apostate. They would issue a death sentence. If they could capture me, they would either force me to publicly recant or they would execute me. Even if I escaped Iran, I would spend the rest of my life in hiding, unable to return to my home, unable to see my family, unable to visit my father's grave in Qom or pray at the mosques where I had spent my entire life. Everything I had built over 58 years would be annihilated in a moment. The cost could not have been higher, but I had seen the truth. I had stood before Jesus Christ and known beyond any possibility of doubt that he was God. I had seen the scars in his hands that proved he had been crucified. I had experienced his love even though I deserved his judgment. I had been offered grace I could never earn. How could I reject that? How could I choose my reputation over truth, my comfort over eternity, my temporary life over his eternal kingdom? I looked at Jesus, at his face that held both perfect holiness and perfect love, and I said, "Yes, I believe. I believe you are the Son of God. I believe you died for my sins. I believe you rose from the dead. I receive your grace. I confess you as my Lord and Saviour. Send me back. I will tell them everything. I will warn them about 2026. I will call them to come to you. I will do it no matter what it costs me." Jesus smiled, and the joy in his face was worth more than everything I was about to lose. He said, "Then go, Hassan. Return to your body. Return to your life. Return to Iran. And remember, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. You will not be alone. I will give you words to speak. I will give you courage when you are afraid. I will sustain you through everything that is coming. Trust me." He reached out and touched my chest, and the moment his hand made contact, everything exploded into light. The return to my body was the most excruciating physical experience of my existence. For 72 hours, my soul had been separated from my flesh, existing in a spiritual realm where there was no pain, no physical limitation. Now I was being forced back into a body that had been lying still for 3 days, a body whose systems had been barely functioning, whose muscles had not moved, whose lungs had been breathing only shallow mechanical breaths. It felt like being crushed and stretched at the same time, like every cell in my body was screaming in protest, like my soul was being stuffed back into a container that was too small and too damaged to hold it. The pain was total and overwhelming, and then suddenly I gasped, a huge, desperate gulp of air, and my eyes flew open. The hospital room came into focus slowly. Bright fluorescent lights above me, white ceiling tiles, the smell of disinfectant and medicine, the sound of monitors beeping frantically as they registered my sudden return to consciousness. I tried to move my hand and felt the pull of an IV line. I tried to speak, but my throat was raw and dry. A nurse who had been standing near the window checking something on her tablet must have heard my gasp because she spun around, looked at me, and screamed. She ran out of the room shouting in Persian, "He is awake! Dr. Ahmadi, he is awake! The Grand Ayatollah is awake!" Within seconds, the room filled with people. Dr. Ahmadi pushed through, grabbed my wrist to check my pulse manually, even though the monitors were already showing my heartbeat. He shone a light in my eyes, asked me if I knew my name, asked me if I knew where I was. I tried to answer but could only whisper. He ordered immediate tests, calling for nurses to prepare equipment, barking instructions about brain scans and blood work. My family arrived within minutes of the news that I was awake. Zara came running into the room with tears streaming down her face. She grabbed my hand, pressing it against her cheek, thanking Allah over and over for performing a miracle. My sons Hamid and Ali stood at the foot of the bed, staring at me like they were seeing a ghost. My daughter Maryam was weeping openly. Even Javad, my youngest, who was usually so composed, had tears in his eyes. They surrounded the bed, touching me. Without asking me questions I was too weak to answer. Zara kept saying, "You came back to us. Allah brought you back. We prayed and He answered." Every time she said Allah's name, something twisted inside me because I knew the truth. It had not been Allah who brought me back. Allah had not been there at all. It was Jesus. Jesus Christ had sent me back. And I knew I would have to tell them, and it would destroy everything. Dr. Ahmadi kept me in the hospital for 2 more weeks, running every test available. Brain scans showed no damage. My cognitive function was perfect. Blood work came back completely normal. Neurological exams showed no deficits. He brought in specialists from other hospitals who examined me and reviewed my case files. Every single one of them said the same thing. What happened was medically impossible. No one remains in an unresponsive state for 72 hours with no underlying cause and then wakes up with 0 complications. Dr. Ahmadi held a press conference and told the media that my recovery was a medical miracle, that there was no scientific explanation for what had occurred. The news coverage was massive. Every channel in Iran reported the story. The Grand Ayatollah, who had fallen into a mysterious sleep and awakened after 3 days with no brain damage, no physical problems, completely restored. Religious leaders across the country called it proof of Allah's favor, a sign that I was beloved by God, chosen for some special purpose. But I could not celebrate. I could not accept their praise or their explanations because I knew what had really happened. And I knew I had been sent back with a mission. I had to tell them the truth. I had to warn them about 2026. I had to call them to Jesus no matter what it would cost me. The first person I told was Zara. It was late at night, about 10 days after I had awakened. The hospital had moved me to a private room away from the ICU. Most of the medical staff had gone home. Zara was sitting in the chair beside my bed, like she had every night, sometimes dozing, sometimes reading Quran quietly. I watched her for a long time before I spoke, memorizing her face, knowing this might be one of the last peaceful moments we would ever have together. Finally, I said, "Zara, I need to tell you something. Something that happened while I was unconscious. Something I saw." She looked up from her Quran with a gentle smile and said, "You had visions. Allah showed you paradise." I shook my head slowly and said, "No, I did not see Allah. I did not see paradise as we have been taught. I saw something else, someone else. I need to tell you everything, and I need you to listen until I am finished before you say anything." Her smile faded, Something in my voice must have warned her that what was coming would not be what she expected. Over the next hour, I told her everything: the presence in my study, the pull away from my body, the journey to the judgment hall, the exposure of my sins, meeting Jesus Christ, seeing his scars, the vision of 2026, the choice he gave me, my decision to receive his grace and return to warn others. I watched her face change as I spoke. At first, there was confusion, then concern, then horror, then something that looked like grief. When I finished, there was a long silence. Zara was staring at me like I was a stranger. Finally, she spoke, and her voice was shaking. She said, "You cannot say these things, Hassan. You cannot. Do you understand what you are saying? You are claiming that Jesus is God. You are denying Islam. You are denying everything we have built our lives on. They will kill you for this. The government will declare you an apostate. They will execute you. And if they do not kill you, they will destroy you. They will strip you of your title. They will take everything from us. Our family will be shamed. Our children will be ruined. You cannot do this." I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. I said, "Zara, I am not telling you what I think or what I believe. I am telling you what I saw. I stood before Jesus Christ. I looked into his face. I saw the scars from his crucifixion. I know he is God. I cannot deny what I experienced. I cannot lie about it. I have to tell people what is coming in 2026. I have to warn them." Zara stood up abruptly, knocking over the chair. Her voice rose, no longer shaking, but filled with something between anger and desperation. She said, "What about me? What about our children? What about our grandchildren? What about the 35 years we have spent together? Does none of that matter to you? Are you willing to throw all of it away for this? For a vision that was probably caused by your brain being oxygen deprived?" I said quietly. It was not oxygen deprivation. It was real. More real than anything I have experienced in physical life. And yes, I know what it will cost. I know I am losing you. I know I am losing our children. I know I am losing everything. But what about my soul, Zara? What about truth? I have lived 58 years in deception. I have led millions of people away from Jesus. I cannot continue that no matter what it costs me. She stared at me for a long moment, tears running down her face, and then she said something that broke my heart. She said, "I do not know who you are anymore." And she walked out of the room. I told my children next, one by one, over the following days. Hamid, my eldest son, who had followed in my footsteps and become a religious scholar himself, was furious. He shouted at me that I was destroying everything our family had built, that I was bringing shame on our name, that our ancestors would curse me for betraying Islam. He said, "You are not my father anymore," and he left. Ali, who worked for the Revolutionary Guard, was colder. He did not shout. He simply told me that if I went public with this apostasy, that he would not be able to protect me. He said, "I love you, but I love Allah and the Islamic Republic more. If you do this, you become an enemy of the state, and I will treat you as such." Then he left, and I have not seen him since. Mariam, my daughter, cried and begged me to recant, to say I had been confused, to claim the experience was just a hallucination. She said, "Please, Baba, please just say it was not real. Say you were sick. We can fix this if you just say the right words." But I could not. I told her I loved her, but I could not deny Jesus. She wept and left. Only Javad, my youngest, responded differently. He sat quietly while I told him everything. And when I finished, he did not argue or shout or cry. He just said, "I do not understand this, Baba. I do not know what to do with what you are telling me. But I have seen your face since you woke up. Something changed you. You look different. You sound different. I do not think you are lying or confused. I think you experienced something real, and I cannot hate you for following what you believe is truth. I do not know if I can follow you. I am not ready to leave Islam, but I will not abandon you completely. It was the smallest comfort, but it was something. 3 of my 4 children had rejected me, but Javad kept a thread of connection, and I thanked God for that mercy. The hospital released me after 2 weeks. I returned home to find that Zara had already moved many of her belongings to our daughter's house. She filed for divorce within days, which Islamic law permitted, since I had committed apostasy by accepting Jesus. The clerical establishment in Qom began distancing themselves from me. Colleagues who had worked with me for decades stopped returning my calls. The office I had operated from in Tehran received orders from the Ministry of Intelligence to suspend all my activities pending an investigation into my mental state. I was not officially arrested, but I was not free either. I was under house arrests, passport confiscated, banned from giving any public lectures or sermons, forbidden from publishing anything. 2 intelligence agents were stationed outside my home, watching everyone who came and went. But I could not stay silent. I had been sent back with a mission, and I had promised Jesus I would fulfill it no matter the cost. 3 weeks after my release from the hospital, I sent word through Javad to some of my former students that I wanted to meet with them. About 40 people gathered at a private home in West Tehran on a Friday afternoon. These were men who had studied under me, who respected me, who had come out of loyalty or curiosity to hear what I had to say. I stood before them in that small living room and I told them everything. I told them about the supernatural sleep. I told them about meeting Jesus. I told them about the vision of 2026. I told them that Jesus Christ would appear above Mosala Mosque during Ramadan 2026, visible to everyone, calling Iranians to himself. I told them that Islam was false, that Muhammad had been deceived, that the Quran was not from God, that only Jesus could save them. The reaction was immediate chaos. Half the men in the room stood up shouting, some calling me a blasphemer, some calling me insane, some just shouting in confusion and anger. The other half sat in stunned silence, their faces showing shock and disbelief. But I kept speaking, raising my voice over the noise. I said, "You have known me for years. You know I am not mentally unstable. You know I am not someone who makes claims lightly. I am telling you what I saw. I am warning you what is coming. And I am begging you to seek Jesus now before 2026, to ask him to reveal himself to you the way he revealed himself to me. Because when he appears above that mosque, you will have to make a choice, and it will be too late to prepare." Several men walked out, but several stayed, and I saw in their faces something I recognized. Doubt, questions. The same questions I had suppressed for years. Maybe my testimony had planted seeds that would grow later. Within hours, word reached the authorities about what I had said. That night, agents from the Ministry of Intelligence came to my home and arrested me. They took me to Evin prison, the notorious detention facility in northern Tehran where political prisoners and religious dissidents are held. I was interrogated for 3 days. They wanted me to publicly recant. They showed me prepared statements where I would claim that my experience had been a hallucination caused by medical trauma, that I remained a faithful Muslim, that I respected the Islamic Republic. They told me that if I signed and read these statements on television, I could return to my life. But if I refused, I would be charged with apostasy and executed. I refused. I told them I could not deny Jesus Christ even if it cost me my life. I had seen him. I knew he was Lord, and I would rather die telling the truth than live promoting a lie. They kept me in heaven for 10 days, threatening me, showing me photos of my family, and suggesting they could be harmed, trying psychological pressure when physical torture did not break me. But something had changed in me since meeting Jesus. The fear of death had lost its power. I had stood before him and received his grace. I knew where I would go when I died. What could they threaten me with that was worse than eternal separation from God, which I had already been saved from? Finally, they realized that executing me would create more problems than it solved. A high-profile execution of a grand Ayatollah for converting to Christianity would draw international attention and might inspire others. So they chose a different strategy. They released me but spread the story that my brain had been damaged by the 72-hour coma, that I was mentally unstable, that my claims were the result of psychological trauma, not apostasy. They thought discrediting me would be more effective than martyring me, but they could not control what had already been set in motion. People at that meeting had recorded parts of what I said on their phones. Within days, audio clips were circulating online. Then someone recorded a longer testimony from me and uploaded it to platforms outside of Iran's control. The Iranian government tried to block it, tried to scrub it from the internet, but it spread faster than they could delete it. Thousands, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands of Iranians and Shia Muslims around the world watched Grand Ayatollah Hassan Tabatabai declaring that Jesus Christ was Lord and warning about 2026. The reactions were exactly what I expected. Some called me a traitor, some called me insane, but others began saying, what if he is telling the truth? What if Jesus really did appear to him? What if 2026 is really coming? With Javad's help and the help of an underground network of Iranian Christians who had heard my testimony and wanted to protect me, I escaped Iran. I cannot tell you the details of how I left or where I am now because there are people actively searching for me. Iranian intelligence has placed me on a wanted list. There are elements within the regime who would rather see me dead than continuing to spread this message. But I am alive, I am safe for now, and I am fulfilling the mission Jesus gave me. I am recording this testimony. I am warning everyone who will listen. 2026 is coming. I have seen it, and the signs Jesus showed me are already appearing. Reports of Shia Muslims dreaming of Jesus have increased dramatically just in the last year. If you search online, you will find testimonies from Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, from Shia communities all over the world. People are dreaming of a man in white who calls them by name and tells them he is Jesus. Political changes in Iran are unfolding exactly as I was shown, though I cannot detail them all here. Technological developments are occurring that will make the 2026 appearance impossible to dismiss as fake. Everything is moving toward that moment when Jesus will stand in glory above Musalla Mosque and call an entire nation to himself. So let me speak directly to you now, whoever you are watching this. If you are a Shia Muslim and you have been having dreams of Jesus, you are not crazy. You are not being deceived by Satan. Jesus is calling you. He loves you. What I saw in 2026 is for you. The appearance above the mosque will be God's final warning, his ultimate demonstration of love and power. But you do not have to wait until then. Seek Jesus now. Get alone and pray. Jesus, if you are real, if you are God, reveal yourself to me. He will answer that prayer. He answered it for me. If you are a Christian, I want you to understand what God is doing. The greatest harvest from the Shia Muslim world in history is beginning right now and will explode in 2026. Millions will turn to Christ. Pray for Iran. Pray for Shia Muslims. Support ministries that are reaching them. Learn how to disciple people from Islamic backgrounds. Prepare for the wave that is coming. If you are someone who is uncertain about all of this, let me tell you what I learned. I spent 58 years absolutely certain that Islam was truth. I staked my entire life on it. I was as committed as anyone could be, and I was completely wrong. You do not have to wait 58 years to discover the truth. You do not have to fall into a supernatural sleep for 72 hours. Jesus is offering you right now the same choice he offered me. You can try to earn your salvation through religious works and face judgment based on your imperfect deeds, so you can receive his grace as a free gift purchased by his death on the cross. I tried the first way for nearly 6 decades. It led to nothing but guilt and fear. The second way, grace through Jesus Christ, gave me peace and forgiveness I could never earn. Here is how you receive that grace. We have all sinned. Every human being falls short of God's perfect standard. Islam teaches that if your good deeds outweigh your bad, maybe Allah will let you into paradise. But when I stood before absolute holiness, I learned that one sin is enough to separate us from God forever. The standard is not balancy, it is perfection, and none of us are perfect. Jesus Christ is God who became human to do for us what we could never do for ourselves. He lived the perfect life we could not live. He died the death we deserved to die for our sins. That he rose from the dead, proving he conquered sin and death. Now he offers his perfection to anyone who will receive it, not based on what you do, but based on what he did. You receive this gift through faith. Pray right now, out loud or in your heart. Say, Jesus, I am a sinner. I cannot save myself. I believe you died for my sins and rose from the dead. I receive your grace. I trust you as my Lord and Savior. Save me. If you prayed that sincerely, you are saved right now. Not because you earned it, but because Jesus paid for it. Welcome to the family of God. Now I want to tell you about 2026. It is coming whether people believe me or not. Ramadan 2026 will begin in late February. During the 15th night, Jesus Christ will appear in visible glory above Musalla Mosque in Tehran. Millions will see him. It will be broadcast live, but it will be recorded on thousands of phones. The evidence will be undeniable, and every Shia Muslim will have to decide, will you acknowledge him as Lord, or will you persist in rejecting him even after seeing him with your own eyes? Do not wait until that moment. Prepare now. Seek him now. Because when he appears, the shock will be overwhelming and many will be too hardened to respond even to a miracle. This testimony has already been banned in Iran. It has been removed from multiple platforms. Iranian intelligence is working to scrub it from the internet and to find me. There is no guarantee this video will still exist tomorrow. If you are watching it now, download it, share it everywhere. And if what you have heard has stirred something in your soul that you cannot explain, leave one word in the comments, Jesus. Now, because maybe this testimony found you for a reason. Maybe you are supposed to be ready for 2026. Maybe your encounter with Christ does not have to wait until he appears above that mosque. Maybe it can happen today. My name is Grand Ayatollah Muhammad Hassan Tabatabai. I should have been the supreme leader of Iran, but I was passed over for politics. I fell into a supernatural sleep for 72 hours. I met Jesus Christ. I saw the year 2026. And I am telling you with everything in me, he is coming. He is Lord. He died for you. He rose for you. He loves you. And he is calling you to himself right now. Do not wait. Get ready.